Good evening, y'all. So I wanted to do a live today and talk about our friend COVID-19. It has resurfaced. It had disappeared for that good month while we were having all the racial tension and all of that going on. But now it has come back into, the picture. And supposedly with a vengeance. And I just wanted to talk about that for a minute. You know, there's a lot of it's a lot of misinformation going on around about COVID-19. You know, we're only getting data for people that have passed away. We're not getting the data for the people that have actually, recovered. Globally, they said about 9 million people have gotten COVID-19. So, there's 7 billion people that live on the planet. There's even people in remote populations that are getting COVID-19, which suggests, this is probably airborne or it's being deliberately dumped on people and things like that. Hey, Kelvin, how are you? But we're not getting the data of the people that have recovered because, they got sick, they got better. All we're getting is the dire death data. And, that could be very misleading, and that can take a psychological toll on you if you're not being told the whole truth. So if you were told, there's 9 million people that may have had COVID-19. Of that 9 million, they have about 4.5 million that recovered. And that, there's still some that are recovering and they're still alive. And then, then they go and add in that death data. The death data, it becomes very minute compared to the number of people that are actually recovering. But they're not going to give you that, because then that shows you that, most people, if they didn't have an underlying health condition and their immune system was able to fight it off, then they were able to get over it. So that would be mostly like, every year we have the flu or we have a cold season and people, they get sick and they recover. And even with those, people die with those. I was talking about COVID-19 earlier and on a radio show, and I was explaining about the mask and, this hand sanitizer. My stance still stands the same that I had back in February as it pertains to those types of things. The mask, everybody's wearing whatever. It has to be some consistency. It has to be the right mask for it to be effective. If you're not wearing the right thing, it's just like you're wearing nothing. And you might as well wear nothing because you're still going to be exposed. Same thing with the hand sanitizer. I did a whole video about the hand sanitizer and why it's not effective. Why you shouldn't make your own. And, I got a lot of slack from that. People were, looking for an answer to something that there is no answer to. There is no cure for COVID-19. If you go and get tested and they say you're positive, there still is no cure for it. When you go to the hospital, they're experimenting on you to see what may possibly work. The ventilators, they're really not working. And you hope you never have to get to that point where they put you on that ventilator, because a lot of time the ventilator is what's causing these people to pass away, because the respiratory distress is not ventilator related. So it wouldn't be a actual condition that you would put a person on a ventilator for. So the whole ventilator, all these things, they're experimenting on people. They don't really know what to do. They're trying to see what's going to work, what's not going to work. There was a whole time when they were experimenting with all those different types of drugs. People were going out and they were buying over-the-counter stuff and poisoning themselves and things. All of this is experimentation. They don't know, or they claim they don't know, or they do know. And, they're keeping the actual treatment they're keeping the treatment, away, because again, when it comes to things like disease, and it comes to things like diseases and things, there's a profit to be made with this. There's a price on your head if you go to the hospital and they diagnose you with COVID-19. There's a price on your head if you get sick enough to where they have to put you on the ventilator or hospitalize you. There's a price associated with that. And so people need to understand that. There's a price too. Once they get this vaccine done, there's a price for this vaccine. They're going to have people to test it on. And black people are usually number one pick for being used for experimentation. This is nothing new. Why do you think they started the vaccines in South Africa? Africa has always been used as a research lab as far as when it comes to medical treatments, drugs, diseases. They infect people over there to test this stuff out. There's nothing different here. So what they do, they go over there and they ravage through those African, communities, populations with a thing, and then they come over here in the United States and they try to tell us, oh, we're in such dire conditions and we're more prone to getting this, that, and the other, so you guys are going to have to, sign up for these clinical trials to test this stuff out. So they're doing nothing different than what they would normally do over in Africa. When they come back over here to the United States with the black people, and they'll convince us that we're so prone to getting this, so prone to getting that. And in reality, we're not. We're not getting anything more than anybody else. A lot of times, a lot of stuff we don't get because we're not exposed to a lot of things that these other people are exposing themselves to. But that doesn't fit the narrative. So if they need guinea pigs, the first population of people they're going to come to is us. They're always going to tell us, we're this many times more likely to get this versus this race, and so we got to take this treatment, or you got to take this drug, and that's they've been doing that. I don't know why we haven't woken up to the reality of that we're always going to be guinea pigs and we're always going to be used for financial gain. Like the COVID-19, there's a lot of labs that they are just reporting cases that they've had, pending, that they were on a backlog of, testing. And so when you see these numbers come out, these cases might have been from a few weeks ago or a month ago or even longer, and they're just getting those numbers out. So it makes it look like there was a spike in numbers. But in reality, these cases may not even be like of recent. This might be old data. But if you're not working in a lab and you're not there to see, who's doing the testing or whatever, and who's reporting these numbers, then you'll believe anything if you believe everything that the news says. Another thing is the tests were coming back. There was a lot of false positives, especially with those rapid tests, which means they were contaminated with positive COVID-19 virus. So even if you didn't have the virus, if it was tested, the virus was in the vial, and so your specimen was mixed in with that, but that positive was there. So when they actually ran that assay, it would come back positive. So you may or may not have had it. So it's a lot that's going on here that is misleading. Number one, when they need to tell the whole story. Like I said in the beginning, they need to tell, okay, yes, we have this many people dying, but we've had this many people recover. They're not telling that. They're not even going back and doing follow-up testing to say, if a person came in and they were positive, they're not doing the follow-up test 21 days later to see if their body has actually cleared the virus and if they're making antibodies. Nobody's going back and doing that follow-up. So they don't even know if those people recovered or not. They're just hoping, they just got the diagnosis that they got COVID-19. That's all they needed, so they can file that under the insurance, get their money, and they go send them on their way. They're not doing any follow-up, so we don't really know the real number of people that have actually recovered. It's in the millions of people that have recovered. We also, I still don't have all the flu data. Like, flu was happening the same time this was going on, and people die from the flu every year. Thousands, not just, a few, 30, 40 people. Thousands of people die from the flu every year. hundreds of thousands of people die from heart disease and strokes every year. So I mean, we gotta, like, yes, COVID-19 is serious, but there's a lot of other serious things out here that we are ignoring. And we're getting all caught up in, people want to argue, and I have nothing to gain by telling you guys this information. Like, I don't have no agenda or anything. So when people try to argue with me, and if you want to use hand sanitizer, you go right ahead. But I'm going to tell you the truth about hand sanitizer. It's up to you what you decide to do with that information. If your mind tells you that even though you know the hand sanitizer ain't working, but you feel secure, then you keep using your hand sanitizer. But just know that it's not stopping the spread of any disease or anything, because it's not being used right. A hand sanitizer, the alcohol has to stay on a pathogen for a extended period of time. It's not just a few seconds. There are numerous scientific papers out there that even when I did my presentation, I presented that information in my presentation, and I showed, like, there's a contact time that, okay, my bad, guys. Somebody had called. But as I was saying, if you feel that you want to use hand sanitizer, you just be my guest. But I have done a video. I use scientific papers. I can show you where there has to be a certain contact time that alcohol has to come in contact with the virus or with any other microorganism that you're dealing with. And it's not a few seconds. A lot of times it was like 5 minutes up to half an hour that it had to be on that, particular pathogen before it to be effective. And so, to just put some hand sanitizer on your hand and it quickly evaporates, you're not really doing yourself any justice. It might kill a few bacteria, but when it comes to a virus is not a bacteria. I also did a whole video about that, explaining the difference between the two. So, I mean, I've been, consistent with how I, even, look at, public health things. I used to be a disease investigator. So when people got sick here in Hamilton County, I would contact them to figure out where they may have been exposed. I had to do the contact investigations like you see these scientists and stuff doing on the news. I had to do the stuff like, we had to write up protocols and things when people got sick and tell them, like, if it's a nursing home, there's an outbreak, what they can and can't do, who we have to isolate. So I've been through this whole gamut. I worked at the health department when Ebola was out, when Zika virus was out, when the MERS-CoV, which was another coronavirus, I was working there when we had to deal with that. So I've dealt with, a lot of these Class A diseases. I did a video explaining how public health actually goes about doing these contact traces and things like that. I've done a video about influenza. I've done a video about coronavirus. So, I mean, when I say the stuff I say, it's not that I just came out of nowhere with it. I mean, I used to work as a disease investigator for public health. I used to work in research labs where I studied diseases. I used to go and test deer for chronic wasting disease, which is a prion disease like mad cow disease. I used to do testing for that, and for all the southeastern states when I worked at UGA. So I mean, I have disease research knowledge. So when I say things, I'm trying to say things to help you guys. I'm not trying to say things to say things aren't real. I never said, not once did I not say that coronavirus was not real. What I did say is that it didn't follow the pattern of a natural outbreak. It did not. It followed the pattern of, it was like it was released on the population. It wasn't like, some person got sick and, they might have went to a restaurant or something and infected people in that restaurant and all that. No, it was more of like, this was an intentional release to cover a large population at a short period of time. And that's what happened. It did, the way it spread around the world so quickly, that was not natural. It was not. And so I've stuck by that. But I've never once said like, oh, it's not real, it's a hoax, or none of that. What I said is that there's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of, fudging of data. There's a lot of data being lied about. There's a lot of numbers being misrepresented on these number totals. In actuality, the United States is probably, their numbers of deaths is probably along the lines of China and was it Italy, probably in the 20 or 30,000s. But if you're diagnosing anybody that comes into the hospital coughing or comes in the doctor's office coughing as a COVID-19 case, then yes, those cases are going to skyrocket up. Or if you're not going to even do an autopsy and you're just going to, you know, not even test the person and they may have passed away and you instantly just say they died of coronavirus, that you can't add those numbers in there, and you know, that's skewing the data. But that's what has happened, and that's even been said at the press conferences that Trump would have and things. He would say, like, the scientists, and I know one of those ladies that was working on his task force, she even said, you know, our data, we were adding presumptive cases in there. A presumptive case means they did not test that person. They just assumed that they had coronavirus. And she said that on the press conference. We were adding presumptive and probable cases. So probable is you may have been around a person that might have been diagnosed with it and you were exhibiting symptoms, but you still don't have an actual test. So you guys got to understand the wording that they're using to understand when they're writing these numbers down and they're collecting this data, that some of that data is flawed. They need to put an asterisk by it. They know that 100,000 people that they had, they need to put an asterisk because it's not giving you the real number. There's a lot of people that were counted in that did not die from COVID-19. Some of those people, you know, they may have died of a heart attack, stroke, you know, anything. But if they came in there and they tested positive for COVID-19, it was just assumed, oh, well, they died from COVID-19. And so, yes, your numbers are going to go very high if you're doing things like that. And so, you know, I try to explain that, and, you know, people get so emotional, and a lot of times you can't put your emotions and stuff like this. You have to put your emotions aside. And, you know, I know people that have had coronavirus that have it now. I've known people that have passed away from it, and nowhere did I say, you know, it was fake or anything. I've known people that have suffered from this, but I also know, I worked in science and research. I also know that they lie about a lot of data. If they can lie and get numbers, you know, a lot of these places that were giving these high numbers, they were getting more money from the government because they were treating, you know, high risk groups like black people, or, you know, elderly, or people that lived in, you know, low income areas. They got a lot more money from the government if they were actually diagnosing and treating people with COVID-19. So if you're in that area, the only way you can keep that funding is that you have to have those cases. So you can either lie or you can infect people and you can produce those cases. And I mean, that it's not far-fetched from them to do that. I mean, they've done things where they've infected people in the history, in recent history. I mean, Zika virus was one, the recent thing that they've infected people with. But we can go talk about the Tuskegee, you know, the Tuskegee syphilis. You know, we've been using it for experimentation for a lot of times. And, you know, they always comment on the premise of, we're trying to help you guys. And what they're doing is they're infecting you guys, and then they're profiting off treating you guys, or, you know, killing you. So that's what I try to educate you guys on. But, you know, I can take it. Y'all can, people get mad at me because, you know, I try to explain about the mask. If your mask is made from where you crocheted a mask, you're not doing yourself any justice. The holes are too big. The virus will go right through there, and it will make you sick. If somebody's around you and they're symptomatic, person also has to be symptomatic for them to make you sick. They have to be sneezing, coughing, you know, producing mucus that actually has virus in it. But if everybody around you is not symptomatic, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get anything from them. But yes, if you're going to wear a mask, it needed to be either the N95 mask or it needed to be a, you know, those respirator type mask. But, you know, crochet masks, bandanas, all that stuff that people are using, that's just giving a false sense of security. That's not actually a sure, I mean, even the N95 isn't isn't 100% proof, virus proof, but it lessens your opportunity of getting it. But these other things that people are doing, I saw a mask that was made of like fishnet material and fishnet stocking type material and stuff. I'm like, okay, y'all done turned this into a fashion icon or a fashion accessory, and it's not supposed to be that. It's supposed to be protecting you from a virus. And then, people are wearing those little surgical masks, and then they're not wearing those correctly. I seen them where they have them right below their nose. You guys know that, viruses can go up your nose. And this particular virus is an upper respiratory virus, which means it lives in your upper respiratory system. Your nasopharyngeal, when they do that nasopharyngeal swab to test you that goes all the way back to your nasopharyngeal area. Yes, that's where the virus lives, is in your nasopharyngeal area. That's why they take the test from there. It lives in your upper respiratory. Your lower respiratory would be in your actual lungs. It doesn't really live in your lungs. It starts out in your upper respiratory system. But, anyway, also, I don't see anybody pushing eye protection. Your nasal lacrimal duct connects your nose and your eye together. So if virus got into your eye, it would just go down your nasal lateral duct, and it would go right to your nasopharyngeal area, and then you can get infected that way and you become sick. Eye protection, it should be pushed. If anything, if you're going to push the mask, you need to push, some type of eye protection, because that's another way that you can get the virus. But that's not being pushed. It's just, they told people to wear masks if they were going out. But then there was no proper training of what mask they should wear and how they should wear it properly. That's not good. At one point in time, it was told that only, medical professionals could use the N95 because there was a shortage. So now that there's not a shortage, I don't know if they're pushing for those. They just told if you just have a mask and now it'll help you so you can go back out. And that was just more of to get you guys back out of the house. Give another false sense of security so you guys will go back to work. It's that they were able to scare you into the house, and then they were able to scare you back out of the house, by saying if you didn't go back, you were going to lose your jobs, or, if you were trying to just stay home and live off the unemployment, they were going to come and get you, and you got to pay that back. It's all been a psychological warfare here, and people don't realize that. But then, your ears too. A virus can get into your ear, that's why your ears make the wax and stuff. And I did a whole video on immunity and how your first lines of defense and stuff are, and earwax is a first line of defense. Mucus, saliva, sweat, all of that is a line of defense against microorganisms. But yes, you have to call the shop. It's 531-7673. You're welcome. As I was saying, yes, your ears, but your body has this whole line of defense where, you have first line of defense, second line of defense, and the third. And the third line of defense is when your body actually makes those antibodies, and that's where your immunity comes from, when your body makes those antibodies. But, I did a whole video explaining. But, I just wanted to come on here and just talk about, COVID-19 and how it has resurfaced, and how these same fears that we had have come back into play. And I want people to understand that nothing had really changed. Other than them telling you now it was okay for you to go outside. That's the only thing that had really changed. But I told people in May it was going to disappear. Whether it disappeared really in reality or not, they were going to have it disappear on paper. And I said May was going to be the month that it was going to disappear. And what did it do? In May, they started pushing everybody back out into, the public. Like I said, I worked in public health. I know how these cycles go. So, I can't, Reed, I can't worry about who's not going to like me and who's, because I'm passing out information. It's the truth. They watch my videos. I have lots of white people that follow me, so I'm not worried about that. They see my videos, and they were actually grateful, because they're under the same assumption too, that, you know, they're only going by what the news says, and a lot of them are not informed either. They don't know. I've had to, when I was a disease investigator, I've had to actually talk to racists. They didn't know what color I was over the phone. They was calling people coloreds and all this other nonsense. And especially when that Ebola had happened and that girl came from Texas and she came up to Cleveland. And, all these, militia type, pro-racist type people were calling the health department, telling me we should have went and got that colored girl and we shouldn't have let her come up here and all this. And, I had to keep I had to keep a level mind when I was dealing with them. But, I had to educate them. Like, number one, she went to Cleveland, we're in Cincinnati. That's like 200 miles away. There's no way you would have got it anyway, unless you went to Cleveland and you were at the hospital that she was in, you were in the bed next to her. And so, I educated this one guy, and he, then he kind of calmed down. I never let him know that I was a black person or whatever, but, it comes with a lot of education and public health and, medicine and things. A lot of people don't know a lot about that. So they're just at the mercy of, whatever the news says, or, whatever the doctor says. And, a lot of times these doctors, they're just experimenting. They don't really know what's going to work, what's not going to work. They're just going to use a couple of things and hopefully things pan out all right. And that's how medicine is. It's called it medical practice. They're practicing. They don't really know. Everybody's different. Something that might work for you won't even work for me, as far as treatments and things. But when it comes to COVID-19, there's a lot of, a lot they don't know. Or if they do know, they're just keeping that information, private, so that they can, keep having this virus, keep running rampant amongst the population. But I just wanted you guys to, realize that, number one, when they're saying these numbers, some of these numbers are old data that they're just reporting now. There's a backlog. Number two, some of those tests might be false positives. And number three, everybody that's diagnosed with COVID-19 ain't got COVID-19. There's a lot of other respiratory diseases that, look very similar and that are deadly. So just know that that if you go to the hospital, which I advise people not, if you don't have to go to the hospital. I mean, even if you don't have to, like, if you have to visit someone, if you can. I know it's hard, because it's hard to have somebody in the hospital and not visit them, because then a lot of times too, people are taken advantage of when they don't have people coming in and checking in and on them and things. But if you can limit your exposure to going to the hospitals, that would be great, because people that do have COVID-19 are going to hospitals, and then that virus is in that environment. And so what happens is it becomes a nosocomial disease, which means it's a disease that you acquire from going to a hospital. And so a lot of people are coming in, they're coming into the hospital well, and then they're picking up this virus or any other pathogen that may be there, and they get sick. I don't know how many, if anybody has gone to the hospital and you go to the hospital and then like a few days later you get sick, you probably picked up some pathogen from that hospital, and that's called a nosocomial disease. And COVID-19 is one of those diseases now. So if you don't have to go to a hospital, or if you can delay going for a treatment or something, I would suggest that until my battery